Closet, a Todd Mills mystery. Book 1. Author R.D. Zimmerman. Publisher Scribble Pub. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Narrator Eric Aust. Chapter 30. 5 miles from downtown Minneapolis, the Linden Hills area was a quintessential Middle American neighborhood and the city's most stable area in which to live. The only common gripe was the noise of jets approaching the nearby airport, circling the western edge of Lake Calhoun. Todd caught a glimpse of the recently built towers of downtown, then turned down Xerxes Avenue and into Linden Hills proper. As he passed beneath the last of the yellow and red and brown leaves, he thought of Michael, who referred to his childhood neighborhood, as family land. And he was right, as Todd drove beneath the last of the massive elms turning off Xerxes and onto 43rd. He took note of the solid wood houses, replete with friendly front porches that lined block after block with bikes and kids everywhere. This was one of the last corners of Norman Rockwell's Vanishing America. But it's so white and so incredibly straight, Michael had always complained, even as he waxed nostalgic about growing up here. While not a large building, the area library was nevertheless a neighborhood landmark. A dark red brick structure with a thick slate roof and a bright, newly refinished oak front door. It resembled a Carnegie library, which it might have been. Todd just hoped that somewhere inside would lie the answer to his question. Taking one last look at the class photo he'd taken from Maggie's, he headed up the front walk, passed inside, and climbed the split stairs on the right. As he approached the main counter, he admired the tall arched ceilings, the leaded glass windows, the fireplace, and took note of the unfortunate beige linoleum flooring. "Excuse me," he asked the librarian. "I'm looking for some class albums. Do you know where I might find them?" "Albums?" A short, blonde woman with blondish gray hair and pale glasses studied him judgmentally. "You mean school yearbooks?" "Right." "Sorry, we don't have anything like that here." She tugged at a yellow sweater draped over her shoulders. "As you can see, this is a small library. Just these rooms up here, and the children's library downstairs. You might try the downtown library, but I'd call first. Most libraries don't have room for that sort of thing anymore. A lot of them cleaned house in the 60s and 70s and sent things like yearbooks to the Historical Society." "So I could try there for Lake Harriet Elementary yearbooks?" "Actually, no." She stared at him, then cleared her throat and continued. "They wouldn't have that either. Not for that particular school." "I'm sorry, I'm a little confused." "Well, if I'm not mistaken, none of the grade schools in Minneapolis had yearbooks." "I see," Todd muttered, unable to hide his disappointment. "Only the high schools," continued the librarian, proud of her acquired knowledge. "So the closest you could come is the yearbook for Southwest High. That's where all the kids from Lake Harriet Elementary went." "Of course." Todd stood there, baffled and at a loss. He just wanted one name, that was all. Jeff would know, of course, but Todd didn't want to approach him with this question, which he might in turn avoid. "It's too bad Lake Harriet Elementary was torn down," mused Todd, rubbing his forehead, wondering what to do next. "Oh, yes, indeed, a real pity. That was, maybe 15 years ago? Something like that. I just wanted to see a picture of one of the graduating class, and I'm sure they would have had that at the old school." Her eyebrows raised. She pushed her glasses up her nose and said, "Say now, maybe I'll be able to help you after all. When they tore the school down, the school offered us all sorts of stuff, but we just couldn't take it. Not enough room, like I said, so they passed most of their historical photos and data on to the Historical Society. I imagine it's all in boxes in some warehouse somewhere over in St. Paul, but it seems to me we might have something of interest in the pamphlet files." Her hand to her chin, she muttered something, then pulled again at the shoulders of her draped sweater. She mumbled a few more words to herself, reached into a drawer, and nabbed a key attached to a large paper clip. "Yes, maybe we do," she said, tapping on her front teeth with the nail of her right index finger. "But follow me." Leaving the main counter, she turned immediately to the right and unlocked a narrow door. She flipped a light switch, then led Todd up some stairs to a small room with a balcony overlooking the rooms below. Perhaps, thought Todd, this had once been a charming reading alcove, a place to hide away with a book. Now, however, it was crammed full of stuff, from clunky old computers draped with a sheet of translucent plastic to stacks of books, broken chairs, and a wall of old oak file cabinets. People live in this neighborhood for years and years, explained the librarian. Even if they do move away, they come back either to retire or just to visit. People are very loyal to Linden Hills, and that's why it seems to me that we kept a few things from Lake Harriet Elementary. Todd felt his heart pick up speed. Like photos? Maybe. Running her finger down the wooden file cabinets, the librarian stopped at one drawer and pulled it open, saying, "Here, you can try looking in here." As Todd approached the open file, she backed away silently, circling around a pile of books. He bent down and began studying the hanging green folders. If he had any luck, which lately had seemed to desert him, there'd be something in here. His fingers started thumbing quickly through the plastic tabs. Todd heard rustling, glanced over, saw the librarian standing there at the top of the stairs, fidgeting with her sweater. She smiled oddly, hesitantly at him. Had she only just recognized him? He said, "This should only take a few minutes." "Yes," she replied nervously. "I'll just wait." He came to a file on streetcars, which had linked this cloistered neighborhood with the rest of the city, and then several green folders on Lake Harriet Bandshell and its various inceptions, another on the history of the music at the lake's bandshell. The Rose Garden, a file containing photos of the fountain moved to the area from Gateway Park downtown. The historical highlights of Linden Hills were all captured here, including at last Lake Harriet Elementary. Eagerly, Todd lifted the green folder marked with the school's name from the drawer. And there it was, an early black and white photo of the large and once proud educational building. Some early group pictures. Next, a more recent photo of the triangular piece of land now cleared of the building and all rubble. Once the wrecking ball had done its job. "Shit," muttered Todd under his breath. He dropped the hanging file back in and ran his fingers to the next plastic tab, which was marked Lake Harriet Elementary Graduating Classes. Todd smiled, lifted the file, opened it. So this library had declined the vast majority of historical data from the school, but they'd kept the tip of the iceberg. Quite rightly, too, thought Todd as he flipped through the first photos. Those are the graduating classes from the early part of the century. He lifted one marked 1927, turned it over, and saw a typed listing of names, carefully taped to the back. If someone had grown up in Linden Hills, moved away, and then returned and sought out old memories, the library would want to have at least a few things on hand. His fingers flew through the stack of black and white photos, soon reaching the 50s and eventually the 60s. So, when would Michael have graduated from the 6th grade? He would have been 10 or probably 11. Sure, 11. So toward the late 60s, Todd skipped through the first part of that tumultuous decade, and then the familiar picture flipped right in front of him. Todd's heart jumped. It was the same photograph from Maggie's album, and he lifted it out. There was Michael, Jeff, and the mysterious third boy. Turning it over, Todd was relieved to find the names once again carefully typed and attached to the back. His eyes ran over the list, reaching the back row. Michael Carter, Jeff Barnes, and... Todd caught his breath, read the name 2 or 3 times. He turned back to the photo, stared at the third boy. No wonder he seemed familiar. The third of the famous group, the Banditos. Michael Carter, Jeff Barnes, and Steve Rawlings, Jr. All of them childhood chums, and all of them as queer as a $3 bill from the get-go. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold. To offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides. And in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.